Members, we'll return to the further consideration stage, the Welfare Reform Bill, and I call Mickey Brady.
Just to reiterate, before lunch, when I was making some points, and I would just reiterate the point that it is my understanding, and I think most people in the Assembly agree, there was a 5-party agreement agreed on the 19th of December, and again, it was my understanding there was to be an implementation group which would take that forward. Now, obviously, some people have broken ranks, and maybe they're the slow learners. I'm not too sure about that, but we'll presume maybe that's the case, or possibly there's just a lack of communication between certain elements of certain parties. One would have to draw that conclusion, and what I've listened to over the past debates, we were told that debate was stifled. Well, I would hate to say if it wasn't stifled, because it might last 3 days the next time. But I will try and be as short and to the point as I can. And there was some misunderstanding, I think, with Mr Agnew this morning about the different funds. And if you look at I think it's Amendment 22 from the Social Development Minister. Now, that deals with the Supplementary Payment Fund, and the purpose of that is to ensure that nobody loses out in that sense, and that people who may, under the proposed Welfare Reform Bill, that might have been taken in and would have been endorsed by some other parties, that the Supplementary Payment Fund will ensure that people do get help and will not lose out. The other amendment that I would mention is the Amendment 14 by the Minister, which makes reference to relevant medical evidence. And I think that's a very important issue, because as someone who for many years did appeals, often medical evidence and appropriate medical evidence wasn't obtained until the day of the appeal. The provision of relevant medical evidence in this case, as proposed, will give decision makers the opportunity to make informed decisions, will obviously cut down the number of appeals, will ensure that people who are entitled to benefit get their benefits. And I think that's a very, very important issue. One other amendment that I would make reference to is Amendment 4. And I just find it strange in a way, not to mention bizarre, that we have a party on the left here who are talking about protecting the public from privatisation, because that's what it's about. And yet, back in 2007-2008, when Margaret Ritchie was the DSD Minister and rushed, and I do say rushed, under accelerated passage, the initial stages of welfare reform through the Assembly. Clause 16, we had asked for it to be deleted because it dealt with privatisation. And we were told, oh no, it doesn't need to be deleted, it's not going to happen. Well, if it wasn't going to happen, why do you need it? Very short time afterwards, medical support services was privatised, and we've all seen the results of that. ATOS, Mr Atwood, when he was Minister, I think it was one of his last acts as Minister, was to sign the contract that inflicted, and I use the word advisedly, ATOS upon us in terms of the work capability assessment. So it ill behoves people to lecture us on what we have or have not achieved when they were the ones that introduced that kind of, those kind of issues. But yes, the member will give it.
I'll come back more substantially to the point that he makes. But the question I have to ask is this. Is the logic of your own argument not to ensure that if there is private contractors appointed arising from welfare reform, that we make sure they comply with the Human Rights Act, which is what Amendment 4 does? So, taking the point that you've made about that we have to ensure that private contractors live up to the best standards if there's going to be private contractors, should you not actually now conclude by supporting Amendment 4, which ensures that they will have to comply with the HJR? It's all right.
I thank the member for his intervention. Would ATOS not have been subjected to that before you signed the contract for him? I would have assumed that to have been the case. Or did you not check that with him through the chair did you not check that with him beforehand? Because in terms, the argument that we have and continue to have is, why do you need companies like ATOS to come in? I think in 4 years they got something like £300 billion of the British government, and then have shuffled off, and someone else has to come in and do it. Capita, we have yet to see what they may or may not be capable of. The contract, no, I won't. I'm trying to finish off here. But what I would say, Concordia, in finishing off, I think we should be sending out a positive message. There's been a lot of negativity. There's been a lot of misinformation sent out to the public, a lot of scaremongering. There's people out there who are vulnerable, who suffer from disability, who are unemployed, who have the working poor. The message, unfortunately, from some parties that are sending out is that it's a negative, it's a total mess. It's not. Obviously, the agreement is not everything that people wanted. We have done what we feel is the best deal that could have been done in the circumstances, much better than anything that was put forward over the last couple of years, I have to say. So I think we should go forward with that positive message. And I mean, as a Republican, as a member of Sinn Féin, my core value has been to protect the vulnerable. I've been doing it all my working life. I'll continue to do it. We as a party do that as part of our core values. And I think that message needs to go out to the public. I think we need to put forward that message. This agreement is something that we fought long and hard for. Parties eventually agreed to it. There will be mitigation. We have neutralised the benefit cap. We've neutralised whatever people go on about the bedroom tax. We have neutralised those. We have ensured that people here don't suffer. And if you talk to groups in England, in the voluntary sector or otherwise, they are extremely envious of what we have got here. Disability groups are the same. So, people can pontificate, to use Mrs Kelly's phrase, all they want. But at the end of the day, it's a good deal as far as we are concerned for the people that we represent, and we will continue to fight that corner for them.
Thank you. And I call Mrs Dolores Kelly.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, Mr Brady seems to be a wee bit agitated today. Perhaps it is somewhat to uncover his blushes when he stated publicly that, just as Martin McGuinness said, that Sinn Féin would deploy a petition of concern against the bedroom tax. And he can garn all he likes here, but the fact is, it's on the face of the bill. Sinn Féin did not sign the petition of concern in relation to the bedroom tax. And as yet, we haven't seen all of the regulations and the accompanying mitigation and flexibilities which the Executive have yet to agree in support of the Welfare Reform Bill going through the legislation. I'll give way in just a second, just a couple of points of legislation. I'll give way to the member.
Could I thank the member for giving way? And I know she's a lot of ground to be covering, but I'm asking the member again, is it not rather inconsistent, to say the least, that the member has since last week been levelling criticism against the package that was agreed by all of the parties on the 19th of December, particularly in the context where the member's party agreed, and the member wasn't there. I appreciate that there, but our party leader wasn't. Other colleagues are sitting in the chamber now were with him whenever the party endorsed a four-party agreement which made no reference whatsoever to a supplementary payment scheme, to a specific mechanism to address the issues around disabilities, and signed on for a 2-year sanction regime. So is it not rather inconsistent for the member now to be coming forward with amendments criticising the deal which was reached and which her party leader endorsed on the 19th of December, having endorsed a further, more weak deal, if you like, on the 17th of December. So what I think they wanted to confirm from Mickey Brady's point of view, the Welfare Reform Bill in front of the House today is addressed by a range of mechanisms of mitigation, which all the parties have agreed in one shape or form to have in place. Those are being put in place, and I do look forward to listening to the Minister this afternoon whenever he addresses all of these amendments. I'm confident that the Minister's message will be, again, positive, which puts further meat on the bones of the deal which was reached, and urge Mrs Kelly, even at this late stage, to go back to the drawing board with the 5 party leaders, which was agreed was the implementation group for the Stormont House Agreement. You can't have your cake and eat it, which unfortunately that's what the party is actually doing.
Too long and then